win week one, because you get week one, you get the second week off, go to the big semi, and you're in the grand final. You're running through on fresh legs.
Just with Canberra and the season they've had, it's such an incredible switch because they had such a good regular season.
I actually think the Broncos can win this. I seriously do. I think if they stay in the game and Reese Walsh hangs in with them, I think they'll be too good for them late on in the football game.
DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome into the DSPN, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking rugby league, NRL specifically today. My name is Lachlan Waugh. Still sitting in for Martin Devlin, though I think he's coming back soon. He could be in Bermuda Triangle for all we know at the moment. I don't know where he is. Anyway, Tony Kemp is with us today, remotely not in studio. He's doing some business in another part of the world. But Tony, first off, thanks for joining us, of course. But you've done pretty well with your tipping in the finals. I think out of all 6 games we've had, you've only gotten one wrong.
Like I said, Lockie, that run with Brisbane, your team, could have gone either way too against Canberra. So it's funny, mate. I've just so that you know, you guys are in a bit of trouble because I've had quite a few potties trying to get me on for the finals to get on their tipping sheets. But it wasn't too hard, was it? This weekend, just gone to pick the sides that were going to win. I thought, Cronulla up against Canberra, just the emotion of Canberra. And the length of the game, it showed late in that second half that they were dead and buried, and Cronulla ran over the top of them. And as for Penrith, mate, 20 from 20 in the first half.
Yeah,
that's how many sets they completed, and going in at 36, I think it was, to zip. They did score that Galvin try late in that first half, but geez, they were never in at Canterbury, and getting Penrith, you guys this week, it's going to be a good game.
Yeah, well, I'm incredibly nervous. We'll get to that in a sec. Let's start with that Penrith-Canterbury game. And look, the crowd was great, the atmosphere was great, the conditions were good, and this is the kind of game that maybe a month or two ago we would have been so excited about. But the pessimist in me was a little bit let down because Canterbury had limped into the finals. Their form wasn't great. The Galvin, Sexton, Burton sort of experiment hadn't really worked. And so I was kind of hoping for a little bit more from this contest. Then again, I was glass half full in a way going into it. But no, Penrith just went to another level. They outmuscled Canterbury in every facet of the game, I thought. As you say there, the sets were perfect. They were just amazing, the Panthers.
I couldn't wait to talk to you about this, Lockie, but let's have a look at Penrith's run. People saying it's set up for Penrith. Ivan rested 16 players. He didn't limp into the semi-finals. He knew exactly what he was getting when he was going into the finals. And they have started to hit some form against Canterbury, who finished up in the top 4 this year. But let's have a look at it. They go to the Warriors. It's the Warriors grand final. They pack out the stadium. Yeah, they win it because they're used to playing in big games. Then they go to Canterbury. It's Canterbury's grand final. They pack out the stadium. You know what I mean? And they go and do it. And of course, they love playing in front of big crowds. They don't just do it. They spank the best defensive team in the competition by 46 points. Now they go to your guys up in Brisbane. And what do you think it's going to be? Another sold-out stadium before the grand final. Yeah. So talking about fairy tales, with this Penrith run, they are big-time players in big games, and they haven't had, if they get to the grand final, they're going to be so hard to beat. They've had, one of the biggest months of their career, sold-out Warriors, sold-out Canterbury, sold-out Brisbane, and then they go to a sold-out grand final if they get there. So it's going to be a pretty good Brisbane team that's needed to beat them. But like I said to you before we got on, Lockie, if anyone's going to beat them, it's Reese Walsh, mate, and the Brisbane Broncos. Be interesting to see what team comes out this afternoon. Does Reynolds get in there? There's a lot of mind games to be played before now on Friday night, but a hell of a game coming up, Brisbane and the Panthers on Friday.
Kempy, maybe it's a silly question, but I'm just always curious, when you are Ivan Cleary and you're in that situation where you're resting players, I've always wondered that, weeks off to start a finals, or when you get that week off sort of after the first week of the finals, or if you're resting players ahead of the first week of the finals, I'm always nervous about how that impacts a team, because for some teams it can do wonders and you get the rest and then you look brilliant the next week or the week that those players play, or it could do the opposite and you sort of lose a little bit of momentum. So it feels like it's a bit of a gamble from Ivan to do that, but at the same time, he knows what he's doing, right? He's done this for 4 straight. I mean, they've won, I think, 11 straight finals games or something ridiculous, Penrith, in the last couple of years. So I feel like there's a risky balancing act there. But at the same time, I guess for Penrith, it's not risky, right?
No, not at all. I guess you're listening to some really good voices talking through the final series. Let's have a listen to Jonathan Thurston last week. He's talking about, getting out and playing a game. They talked about what was it like, that grand final that you kicked the drop goal. And he's saying, like the first thing you want to do is you want to get out there. You've got a hostile crowd. You're coming down to Sydney. The first thing you got to do is shut the crowd up. If you ever look at that game against Canterbury, I think it was the 53rd minute. They panned to the crowd. Not one crowd member was up in arms, shaking their hands. They were actually walking out at the 60th minute. And that's what Nathan Cleary can do to a side, you know what I mean? He can go into that hostile territory and get points on the board, and it takes the crowd out of it. So they know how to go away and win games away. Yep. The other thing that Ivan has done is, if you look at the players that are starting to hit their straps, even though Liam Martin went down late in the second half, but Brian To'o and Paul Alamoli is a massive punt coming into the final series up against a winger that had been a reserve grade winger all year. He's struggling for form. You've got to say arguably the best Panthers player in the last 2 weeks. But he just knows when to pick him and what to get out of them. Yeah. And even Paul Alamoti himself admitted, Ivan just told me to be ready and ready to go. And hasn't he been ready to go? And then, of course, the other one is when they talked to Nathan pre-game against Canterbury, and they asked Nathan, how's your dad? And Nathan said, he's just relaxed. He's just Ivan. So he's basically done all he can to get those players there, and they know what they need to do to get out there. For me, I said this to a very good mate of mine, Kevin Edel, this week, because his son KL's playing all right for Cronulla, and I says, mate, one game away from the big dance. Good luck to the young'un. And he said, yeah, it's going to be tough. And I said, yeah, it is. I said they are going to just they can't make any errors. They're just going to fight you to the death, Melbourne. And just strangle you to death and make it a finals game. So hopefully Cronulla's up for them. But that's what Penrith do in that first half. 20 out of 20, 36 points, game over.
It was an incredible stat. I think, I want to say it was 28 minutes into the game, I think, or close to around half an hour, and the Dogs hadn't even had any sort of play the ball inside Penrith's 20-metre line. And then as the commentators were saying
there was one play the ball in the 20-metre zone of the Penrith Panthers. So defensively, they're not under a hell of a lot of pressure. Yeah. Everything that they're doing is going right. And we knew that again when the Warriors played them in the first round, that you weren't going to get any favours out of them. And they say death by 1,000 kicks. Like Nathan Cleary just said, well, we know you're going to hold on to the ball today, but you're not coming at us from our own half. You're going to come out of your own half. We're going to tackle you, and we're going to see whether you can hang with us. And that's what the Broncos need to do this week. The thing about the Broncos, mate, is that they're so exciting to watch. And I describe Reese Walsh as rocks and diamonds. You know what I mean? Like you're gonna get an absolute diamond if it's on, or it's stone cold if it's off. You know what I mean? And he just throws those 50-50 passes, makes those 50-50 decisions, but has such speed. And interesting to see the comments last week about the Warriors needed a fullback. Just so you know, like I only threw Tommy Turbo up as one of many options.
You ruffled some feathers, didn't you?
Oh, mate, but the blind faith, they call that, not the Warriors faithful, but the blind faith, they bite back. But my point being, if you look at the best fullbacks in the competition, one thing that the best fullbacks have got is speed. I mean, out and out speed. And you see it this weekend. Like if you're going to try and get past Penrith and also Melbourne, you have to get past Pepinells and Reese Walsh, especially at fullback, because they get into those positions, skip past players. They can both throw decent passes, and if a defensive line isn't up to it, they'll burn you. Yeah. You know what I mean? And what I was saying last week is those old legs of Chance, he doesn't have that speed anymore. Yeah. And if the Warriors were to progress from next year, they need someone with out and out speed. And unfortunately, that was the point I was trying to make. There are positions on your football team that are absolutely critical. I mean, absolutely critical. And if you look at the two teams that do it the best, Pepinells and Reese Walsh at the moment. If you look at them, you go, okay, well let's have a look. Are they gonna get us that speed and that pass, and get us into that final to try?
But they're almost de facto halves as well, aren't they? Especially Walsh with his kicking game.
Well, I think that final, there's some final games there. Reese Walsh can play six. I do. I think fullback at the moment in today's game is a half. It's just the speediest half. When you guys come up against Penrith, you got Nathan Cleary to deal with. I think what Brisbane can take a leaf out of the Warriors' books is how to shut down Nathan Cleary, because they did a fantastic job in shutting down Nathan Cleary that night at Mount Smart. And if they go, the thing with Nathan's kicking game and just the way that he dominates, field position is so critical in finals football, and staying in the arm wrestle. You know what I mean? Like even what. I don't know if you noticed it, but even I think it was like 40 points to 20 at that stage, and Penrith walked back to halfway. You'd think they'd go and do a long kickoff. He went for a short kickoff so they could get the ball back and go again. I just thought, geez, the arrogance of just, hey, like you're not out of the game yet.
Yeah.
Canterbury.
It's just pummeling the opposition,
And that's, when they talk about driving the nails and, foot on the throat, I just don't think at the moment in club NRL there's anyone better at it than Nathan Cleary.
Yeah. Kempy, what about Canberra versus Cronulla on Saturday? I had some work duties on Sunday morning, so I got to bed early on Saturday. I checked the score, it was 6-0 Canberra. I thought, okay, here we go, a low-scoring game. I think 30 minutes had gone at that point. And I get up and I look at 32-12. What a second half from Cronulla. And I just wonder, just with Canberra and the season they've had, it's such an incredible switch because they had such a good regular season. They actually got some good wins over some top sides as well, because they had wins over the Panthers and they'd beat Melbourne and Magic Round, so they could beat the big dogs. It wasn't like they were burgling their way to the top of the table. And then a very demoralising close loss to Brisbane, and then just thoroughly outplayed against Cronulla. I was quite shocked by how things have turned for Canberra.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of people making some really good comments around Canberra. The first one was Ricky asking for that Sunday game, giving Brisbane the firm ground, and it's a true thing, mate. It's like a Group 1 racehorse. They won't run that well if it's a muddy, thick pitch. That they've got to get through in a Group 1 race for a horse, and Brisbane are like that. So you've got that game coming up this weekend, 3:00. Brisbane and Penrith. Is that? Sorry, that game coming up, Brisbane and Canberra at 3:00 in the afternoon. It's set up for Brisbane, isn't it? So that was the first thing. And then the other thing that I really thought when I was watching that first semi-final between Canberra and Brisbane was the length of time that the game went on.
Yeah, 94 minutes or something, yeah.
And like I said, with the emotion, like you had three shots at it. You thought you'd won it on full time. You thought you'd won it during extra time, and you thought you won it during golden point. And the emotion of, if you're pitching, like having your heart palpitations, yes, I've won it, no, I haven't. And when Ricky said, oh no, they've come to work on Tuesday ready to go, I think they've come on Tuesday ready to go, but they haven't got the gas in the tank. And if you look at Cronulla, I thought it was a hell of a first half for both teams. It's like some of the defence from both teams to hold each other out. It was inspiring defence from both teams that really wanted to win that game. But the difference was that Cronulla had the fresh legs.
I was going to say, when you've got that tight contest and that tight battle, right, the team who's got just a little bit more on the tank come the second half is the one who's going to pull away, right?
Yeah, and if you're watching the halves, you're like, Nicho Hynes was out of the game in the first 20 minutes. He was just floating around and passing it on, and Trindall was kicking the football. And then as the game wore on and Canberra started to get tired, especially when Tapine and Papali'i were off, he started to come into his own and he started getting across the line. And I said that about Addin Fonua-Blake and the big guys in the middle of the park. Nicho Hynes would be slapping him on the back of the backside saying, just get me across the ad line. Yeah. And of course, Nicho Hynes comes out and has one hell of a game, I think a big positive for Cronulla is the kicking game from Trindall down that left edge. I think, he's taken a bit of pressure off Nicho Hynes, and I think Fitzgibbons has purposely worked on that this year, just allowing him to step in and dictate, play when and where he needs to do that. But again, for me, it's a big win for Addin Fonua-Blake against Joseph Tapine and Papali'i.
Yeah,
but in saying that, they basically played their grand final the week before. I thought Canberra up against Brisbane. The good thing for you, Lachie, that Brisbane got was that they get the week off.
Yeah.
So they actually, when Ricky says they come to work on Tuesday and they're ready to go again, imagine today the boys are coming to work and they're ready to go against Penrith and they've had the week off. It's really hard to beat the two teams that have had the week off, Lachie. So you're sitting in the box seat, brother, against Penrith, but just up against one of the best teams ever.
I know, and I'm still scarred from what happened 2 years ago on that first Sunday of October in 2023, and it pains me to even think about it. And then I talk a lot about that Magic Round game earlier this year because it was one of the most deflating results I've ever or matches I've ever witnessed as a Brisbane fan. But I think if you'd switched it round and Brisbane had lost that game to Canberra, I think Brisbane probably lose to Cronulla as well. Because I just think and Brisbane actually had the travel factor as well for that first week of the final. So if you then have them at home to Cronulla, I think Cronulla get them there, and then they'd be playing the Raiders this week. So I think either way, to your point before about how Canberra just didn't have the gas in the tank, I think it would have gone both ways, right?
Yeah, look, I think that first week of finals football is really important for the teams to win it. Melbourne talk about that. You listen to Cooper Cronk and Billy Slater talking about it through the commentary and Cam Smith saying, when we got to the finals, we knew how important it was to win week one. Because you get week one, you get the second week off, go to the big semi, and you're in the grand final. You're running through on fresh legs. And, like we've said all year, like the only team that's going to come out of the bottom, the top eight from outside the four that could possibly cause an upset is Penrith, and they're living up to that tag, but there's reasons why they're living up to that tag, they're four-peak, they're going for five, they've got basically the same team, the players that you think would be sketchy, like Blaise Toligi at 6, defensively on the weekend against Canterbury was just outstanding. He didn't have to do much attacking because, Nathan sorted that out for him, but defensively it was a semi-final defensive effort, and then the rest of the players, it wasn't the 16 players that he rested, but Martin and Toru that had an extra couple of weeks. Like Brian Toru's coming into his own again, so his back three, Alamot, you've got to think Dylan Edwards' form hasn't been that scratch hot going into the semis, but having Alamotti and Toru at the back doing what they're doing, now Dylan Edwards is starting to come back into it again, so it's sort of just all starting to fall into place for Penrith, but going up to the old Lang Park, Suncorp Stadium, it's a full house. Reese Walsh is in the form of his life. You've got to say that, So they said the same thing about Tedesco, but he's not playing no more. For me, I think Reese Walsh is as important as Nathan Cleary in this final series if Brisbane are to go any further. It'd be interesting to see how, if you look at the kicking game from Penrith going down off his right foot down the left edge on the weekend to the young Canterbury winger that took over from Montoya, just had a nightmare bringing it off his line all game. And I can see Nathan and Ivan just saying, we're going to back ourselves on our kick chase this week. And we're going to get there, good field position. He's just going to say to his forwards, roll up, get us up to the 40 to 50, and Nathan will put it up and get our especially down their right edge with Alamotti and the centre, and just get in and tackle Reese Walsh right in that corner all game. And he's just going to try and beat him by position again. That's what they're good at. Yeah.
Do Brisbane have the backbone and I guess the mettle to be able to win a real heavyweight dogfight with Penrith? Because it's the one thing, as a fan, that I've thought is Brisbane's weakness, really, ever since Anthony Seibold got sacked and we brought in Kevin Walters as the coach. I've just always been worried about their resilience and their ability to just stay in contests and grind it out. And I still don't know, actually. And I think when you've got Pat Carrigan, who's not in this game, and you lose one of those big bodies, particularly when you talk about that grind that you talked about a lot in week one of the finals between Penrith and the Warriors, I don't know if Brisbane have that resilience to be able to grind it out against Penrith.
Well, they talked a couple of years ago about Brisbane making the final. They get there, they have the game wrapped up against Penrith, and Nathan Cleary comes back and wins it in the end. That's the one that you're saying you're still having nightmares about. Yeah. Does that build resilience? You tend to think so, because this week it'd be all about that game. You know what I mean? Where they basically had the grand final one. Here's our opportunity to get back and actually get back one on Penrith, and knock them out. The first team to do it in 5 years. All right. So you're talking motivation, hell of a lot of motivation. Resilience as far as players go, well, when you look in the Canberra game, you're going, geez, they're down 28-12. But if you look at their form, they've come back all year when they're down at half time, and they've won a lot of games late.
That's true. All
right, so they've got plenty of points in them, so they can win football games. But then you look at big game players. You've got Ben Hunt. I think he's won 4 out of the last 5 games he started a halfback while Reynolds is off. You've got Reynolds come back to win a final with South Sydney, and just about got them one when he went back up there to Brisbane. So you got Ezra Mann that comes off the bench, and he's as exciting as anyone if he's playing or if he starts. You've got Walters out through an injury. You've got Pat Carrigan that's missing in the middle. So I think that they're geared up for this one. I actually, like I said to you, got bloody Penrith and it's all set up for them. I actually think the Broncos can win this. I seriously do. I think if they stay in the game and Reese Walsh hangs in with them, I think they'll be too good for them late on in the football game. I think if it goes their way and they stick, the good thing about Canterbury, even though Penrith sort of won the first half and won it convincingly with 20 completions out of 20, they would have taken their foot off the pedal and started thinking about Brisbane this week and Canterbury score some points, but they scored plenty of points. They did still score plenty of points, and that would be something that they'd be looking at Brisbane go, well, they do leak in certain areas of the football field. It's just that we have to hang with them. And I think they start with Reynolds. I think he comes straight back into the side. I don't think Mann gets a start. Whether they put Mann on the bench or start him, I think that's the key there in the 6th jersey. But Carrigan's the big loss, mate, because to beat this Penrith side, if you have a look at Penrith and you have a look at their bench, like Isaiah Papali'i coming off the bench has been absolutely superb for Penrith, as have the rest of the Penrith forwards. For me, again, I thought the hooker, the starting hooker for Penrith, Mitch Kenny on the weekend, was a difference. Like the crispness of his passing out of dummy half and his decision making were just spot on for that first half. And Nathan got everything on the back of Mitch Kenny playing so well in that 9 jersey, even though he wasn't wearing 9. I think he was wearing 22. And that's what I'm saying about Penrith. Brisbane have to be doing exactly the same thing. It's like just mirror them. And then when you go for your knockout punch players, it's a game between Nathan Cleary and Reese Walsh. Who's got the better game?
What about Melbourne and Cronulla? Funnily enough, you'd be quick to say, Melbourne will steamroll this one. They know how to win these finals games, and people are quick to point out how Cronulla, I guess, aren't the best when it comes to the final series over the last few years. Cronulla are arguably the form team of the competition.
Yeah, I guess the big question for Melbourne before you talk is their 7. Like, does Jerome Hughes play this weekend after fracturing his forearm? I personally think he does. I think Jerome Hughes actually plays against Cronulla on the weekend, and that's going to mean a hell of a lot to the Melbourne side, as far as structure goes and their system on how they beat Cronulla. Pepinel's coming back into the side is another one. You just get it. You've got that spine back in Grant, Pepinel's and Munster and Jerome Hughes, and they're hard to beat on the best of days. So I agree with you that Cronulla are the form team. I think their first half against Canberra, that's the type of game that they have to play. Like they just have to muscle up and hope like hell that Jerome Hughes is a bit sketchy. Been out for a couple of weeks. Coming down to Melbourne though, mate, with a team that knows how to get into the final, it's going to be. I still think it's going to be really tough for Cronulla. Yeah. I thought. Like I said, Melbourne have been the team that I've been picking all year, and I think if Jerome Hughes plays this weekend, I just think again like Penrith, they know what to do. They'll wear Cronulla down and they'll get them, and they'll be one of the finals team next week.
Do you trust the halves of Trindall and Hynes?
Oh look, I think Trindall's been really.
He's been one of the best players in the finals, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, look, he's sort of got a game on him. He's not afraid to try things. I thought Britton Nakora was absolutely outstanding when he came on and late in the game, like just the way he was running and the lines that we know that he runs. He also covers a number of positions, out on those outside backs as well. So, they got some big. Billy Burns was really good for Cronulla. I thought the edge players were well. Again, their front row, the big front row, they got knocked out by that little hooker. Will never live that down. But it is one of the ways, the tackling techniques that Canberra do when shooting out of the line and trying to put some pressure on. But I just think, if they are to sort of get Melbourne, Canberra, it's going to start with their big guys. Addin Fonua-Blake, there's a reason why Fitzgibbon signed him. And everyone goes behind Addin Fonua-Blake. Like he played big minutes on the weekend before they gave him a break. and then they brought him back on late in the game. It's just that he gets them going forward. And the likes of Trindall and Nicho Hynes, if they're to cause any type of havoc against Melbourne, they've got to be on the front foot.
Okay, Kempy, final predictions. Who's winning this weekend?
Ooh, mate, this weekend could actually stuff me up. I'm going to go
5 out of 6.
I'm definitely going Melbourne. I think Melbourne will get Cronulla down here. I know you're going to go Brisbane because you're Brisbane, so I'm going to go Penrith.
I don't know. Marty and I did a big sort of preview piece, at the start of the year, and I picked a Melbourne-Brisbane grand final, and he straight away just laughed and said, you're in dreamland, and I thought we had the roster to do it, and now the coach...
Get it up, mate. Get it up.
Well, I don't know. I mean, can I just say, I'm trying to be as neutral as possible when I'm saying this. Wouldn't a Brisbane-Cronulla grand final actually be really intriguing? Because they're two pretty contrasting teams, and they're two teams that have just picked up their form like crazy at the back end of the year and have turned into giant killers. That'd be quite a cool grand final, I think. Yeah,
I've said it all along. I think this year is the year that you are going to get a smoky, if any, because of the way that the competition was, like 32 points to get into the 8. Two teams getting straight set out of the competition in Canterbury, along with Canberra, who won the minor premierships. It hasn't been done before. And now you've got Cronulla and Brisbane. No one picked Brisbane, their sketchy form during the year, and everyone said that they're the proverbial chokers, Cronulla, yet they're in a major prelims against Melbourne and Penrith. Penrith on a 5-peat, and Melbourne looking to go back and after that 14-6 loss in the grand final last year to redeem themselves. So, mate, it's just great theatre. It is absolutely great theatre. You've got the Melbourne grand final this weekend. The Brownlow was on last night, but in the background is the NRL's bubbling away. Daily M's coming up. You've got the two biggest semis. People, mate, Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne. You know what I mean? And the 4-peat premieres in the background. So, mate, it's great theatre. I think if you're a fan, you've all got a chance this weekend. But don't go riding off that team that finished 7th, mate.
No.
We've been saying it. We've been laughing about it, but mate, who would have thought they would have gone and given the best defensive team of the year 46 points?
Yeah, best defensive team.
It's just amazing.
DSPN.